Hello, stat students. Today I'm going to show you how to make a histogram and a box plot on the graphing calculator. If you look on your notes for 1.2c, the first example is what percent of your home state's residents were born outside the United States? The percentage for each state is listed below. So there's 50 values. We want to enter them in a list. So we go to Stat, and then we select Edit. And then for the sake of time, I went ahead and entered the values in list 1. And that's the first thing we do. The next thing we want to do is we want to make the plot. So we go to second, y equals, and then we select one of these plots. I always pick the first one and make sure it's turned on. So I'm going to hit enter, and then it's blinking on the on, so you want to hit enter again. And then go to the down arrow, and then you want to choose one of those plots. Well, the first one is a scatter plot, and we'll talk about that in chapter 3. The second graph, and we don't want to go down because it'll just go down to the next thing. So you want to use the right and left buttons. So that one is a line graph, and we're not going to be using that in stats. Third one is our histogram. The bars are touching each other. That's the one we're going to use. But just to walk you through it, the rest of these, the next one is a modified box plot. That's the one that shows the outliers. Then you have a regular box plot, and then you have a normal probability plot, and we'll talk about that in chapter 3. So I'm going to go back to the histogram, and it's already pretty much highlighted. And then we want, our data was in list 1. I have data in list 2 also, but I remember putting in list 1. Frequency is something we'll use later on when we talk about probability, when certain values appear more than once. So right now you don't need to worry about it. And we can select graph. So at the very top of your screen. And sometimes you won't see the graph all the way. I think mine was already on Zoom 9. So Zoom 9 is your friend. But if you go to Zoom 6, it'll give you the standard four quadrant graph. You want Zoom 9 so you can see it a little bit better. And then over, if you hit trace, it will show you the first box has a bin width of minimum 1.2, less than 4.9, and then just right arrow, the next one 4.9, less than 8.6. Now the n equals 11 means there's 11 values between 4.9 and 8.6, or 11 states. The first one would be 20. So if you added all of them up, they would equal 50 states. But the thing we don't like about this is we don't like those ugly decimals. So what I did was I went ahead and went back to my list, and I just want to show you something. Right now, notice the list is not in order, and we'd have to go through 50 numbers to figure out what the biggest value was and the smallest value. So we can go back to stat. We can go to sort, and we can sort the list in ascending order, so smallest to largest, or descending order from largest to smallest. Well, we want to go ascending. I mean, it doesn't really matter. And if you hit enter, it'll ask you, it's not asking you for anything, but you're going to put in list 1. So remember the blue button and the blue letters. So you want to use the second key. So second, L1, and hit enter. It says done, but if you go back to stats and you go to edit, notice the list is in order. So if I'm not going to go all the way down, but the largest value was 27.2. The smallest value is 1.2. When you subtract that, you get 26. And I divided by 6 because if you look on your notes on the back page, there are 6 squares. So I divided 26 by 6, and I got 4 point something, which I just rounded to 5. And so I decided I was going to make my bin width 5, so from 0 to 5. So what you want to do is you want to go to your window. So up on the very top screen, the second button is window, and you want to go, X is from 0 to 30. With a scale, I chose 5. And then the Y minimum, I chose 0 to 20. and I just left it as a scale 1. And now if you hit graph and you hit trace, notice that's so much better. So the bin width from 0 states all the way up to 5, but not including 5, I had 20 states. And then 13 from 5 to 10, that's 33, 42, 47, 49, and 50. And so what we want to do is we want to graph that on our graphing we want to plot that on that paper that you see. So if you go ahead and plot it, you would label the x-axis percent born in another country, and the y-axis should always be labeled frequency or count, because that's what you're seeing. You're seeing 20 states, 1 state, and so on. So left, our vertical axis should be frequency, horizontal axis should be percent born in another country, and here you can number on the bottom 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, and you'd plot it, and that's what your histogram looks like. And then we can describe the distribution using SOCs, so we can describe the shape, whether there's any outliers, the center, and the spread. So we can go ahead and talk about the shape. The shape is right skewed. As you can see, if you were to draw a little density curve over this, the tail is to the right, so it's a right skewed graph. As far as the outlier goes, there are none. If there were, you would see a bar way further than any other bar. The center would be best described using the median because it is skewed. So the median, we can figure that out by going to stats, go to calculate, because we want to use our one variable statistics. And I need to make sure that's list 1. There's so many things you have to remember, but you don't want to get it wrong. And we're not really interested in the mean because it's skewed. So the median is 6.1. So that is our best measure of center. And then our spread, we would want to use IQR if we're using the median. So Q3 minus Q1 is 8.6. So that takes care of everything with no outliers. And we're done with a histogram. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to make a box plot. And this particular example is travel times for a random sample for 15 adults in North Carolina in minutes. And this is travel time to work. And in this particular example, the numbers are already ordered for us from smallest to biggest. But if we go to stats, edit, I already entered the numbers in the list for time's sake. So there's 15 numbers. And this one's pretty easy. Again, we go to always make sure, I don't think I mentioned this, or maybe I did, make sure your stat plot is off if you don't want a graph, one of these graphs. If you just were doing Algebra 2 and just needed a parabola, for instance, you want to make sure that your stat plot's off. So we already know it's on, and we're going to hit enter, and we are going to select the modified box plot. It's the best one to select because it'll tell you whether there's an outlier or not. So we're going to select that one. And this time our X list is in list 2. Oops. Well, you know what? After this, I don't even know why I'm going down. Just hit graph. And this is a really good graph. It shows pretty much everything. Actually, I could probably show this a little bit better. Maybe not, so let me see. Okay, there. I didn't hit zoom 9. So now if you hit trace, this one's awesome because the 5 number summary is there for you. So the minimum is 5, Q1 is 10, the median is 20, Q3 is 30, and then the maximum is 60. And this is clearly right skewed. And now we can describe, when we're going to draw it. So again, I took the biggest value, which was 60, minus the smallest, that's 55. And then I divided by the number of squares that you see on your graph paper. And there were 13 of them. So 55 divided by 13 was like 4 point something. And I rounded to 5. So I started this one at 5. So I started the bottom scale at 5, and then 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, so on. Just whatever fits on your graph. I mean, you can do it whatever way you want. And this is the tail. So now, we also want to label our graph. So the horizontal axis should be travel times in North Carolina to work. And you don't have to label anything for the vertical axis for this one. As far as the shape goes, it's right skewed. As far as outliers go, there are none. Even though this looks like it's very far away, you don't see any of the dots that are just shown out to the side. The center is going to be a median again because it's right skewed, and the center is 20, as we can see right here. And IQR would be Q1 is 10, Q3 is 30, so 30 minus 10 is 20. And that is it for today. So have a great day, stat students.